Welcome back everyone to a new video. I know I haven't posted for probably about a month and a half or so, but I've been having a super fun time with the league. It's been awesome to experiment with new builds, all the tattoos, all that good stuff. It's been super fun. But I've got some exciting stuff lined up. In today's video, we're going to be talking about 5 items that are, in my opinion, under the radar. Perhaps they're really not for a lot of people, but I think they should be talked about anyway because they're pretty cool. And they might be able to fix something in your build, or perhaps be something that is build enabling for you to build around in the future. So yeah, we're going to go and start it off. First item we're going to be talking about is Ulmans Gaze. This is a unique jewel that was added quite a while ago with some other unique jewels, but is very, very useful. Basically what it does is that it gives you chaining off of terrain. So basically like if you miss monsters, right, or if something like comes off of like a sniper's mark or something like that, like it can basically like chain off the terrain, which is really, really cool. And the way to enable this essentially is you have to use Abyss Jewels. Now you could do something with like Light Poacher where you're getting like a lot of Fizz's extra elemental, that's a helmet. Or you can just run this essentially raw as it is, because you might have a lot of searching eye jewels in your build just for additional flat damage or crit or whatever you need. And so basically the idea behind this is that if you got a lot of projectiles, and it isn't necessarily a problem of like you aiming, like if you just have a lot of projectiles in general and you need them to hit just because the spray is so large, that having that extra chain is really, really nice. So this could be done on really anything. This could be done like, kinetic blast or tornado shot or whatever high projectile thing you really want to use it on, because it just getting the additional chain off walls is super nice. It's basically adding on to like a Deadeye Ascendancy where you're getting the ricochet off walls. It's basically doing that, which is very, very nice. It's one of those things that doesn't pop up on POE as super strong, right? Because it's just like, hey, it has some additional chance to chain, but in reality can feel really, really nice in terms of clearing, just because of the fact that if you're in those close quarters maps, granted it's not great for like open maps with nothing really to chain off of, but if you're in close quarters maps, maybe you're doing like Crimson Temple farming for apothecaries or something like that, it's fantastic because it basically just hits off all the walls and gives you a lot more effective DPS just because of the fact that you're hitting so many more things with your projectiles. So definitely look into this one for your build. The second item we're going to be going over is called the Yok of Suffering. This is something that I think is decently-ish popular, but wanted to kind of talk about a bit because I think that it has a pretty general use case actually for a lot of builds. Basically, what the big line here is saying that, hey, your elemental damage can shock. The nice thing about this is that, again, this means that if you're running something like cold or fire damage, then you can actually use this to inflict, well, a bigger shock, right? Or just get shocks in general. It's kind of similar to like a Shaper of Storms from Elementalist, where all of your damage can shock. And so, let's say you're like a pure cold build or something like that, and you're like, I need a lot of increased damage taken. So maybe you only have like a Bottle of Faith and you don't have many other sources. And Yok of Suffering can be awesome because shock gives the increased damage taken. And if you're hitting really hard as well, maybe with like Cold Reap or something like that, then you're getting a lot of additional damage, which is really, really neat. Just adding, again, just a ton of damage. And it has some decent stats on it as well, just getting some res, etc. But it's generally not too expensive to pick up, which is good, and can generally be a nice little boost to DPS, or I should say a larger boost if you're hitting really, really hard, and is quite accessible for a decent amount of builds. The third item we're going to be talking about in the list here is Sandstorm Vassage. This is something that's made a return from Sanctum and is absolutely fantastic, was super hyped during the Sanctum League, and I think it's kind of fallen off the radar a bit. I've seen it's still been used, but it's a very, very strong unique. Basically what it does is that it's a helmet that essentially sets your crit chance of your main weapon is the new base critical strike chance for your spells. This is extremely huge because obviously there's some obvious use case where you do like replica Tripanons, I believe it's called, and you get like 100% base crit and you can get really, really strong damage there just because it's so much crit chance. You can do like Marlene's Fallacy, things like that, and get a ton of crit multi off it, etc. However, even just using it though on base crit weapons can be very, very nice, especially because of the fact that let's say you have like a wand or some kind of like two-hander staff, whatever, that has like a local crit chance mod on it. Well, usually that's not good because of the fact that the crit chance is on the weapon and not on your spell. Well, this kind of does the opposite of that, where like you want that roll on your weapon. And so it can help kind of like even out maybe some like really, really expensive wands. Instead of paying like, a billion divines for a really nice wand, well, you can just get one local crit chance, which generally isn't like a desired mod. Because it's an attack mod, right? But your Sandstorm Vassage says, nope, that's the new mod, which is really, really nice. Works well on low base crit spells as well, and generally just overall provides a very, very nice boost in damage. So yeah, that's item slot number 3, and we're moving on to number 4, which is an old one, but a fun one. Item number 4 is something that I should use more often, but I really enjoy when I do use it, and it is Doppelganger SKs. This item has been around for a while since the introduction of Maven, and generally gets pretty cheap as the league goes on, just because there's so many of them from people farming Maven. And it's a really cool chess piece. Basically what it is it's kind of a fixer chess piece for defense or your offense. Basically what it gives you is that it gives you 2 modes that you can toggle between, which is sane or insane. If you're sane, you take a lot less physical and chaos damage and regenerate some HP over time once you've been hit by something, which is fantastic. Because, you know, for a lot of builds that can't like fit physical reduction into their build, or even just chaos damage as well, it's a great fixer there, because this can roll up to 40% less damage taken, and that is a huge buffer from taking damage. I know an option could be to do something like Lightning Coil, where it's like, oh, you take Fizz taken as. However, though, with Lightning Coil, you do have the downside of like a lot of minus lightning resistance, and as well, you don't get the regen on it, and then also you don't get the flexibility of swapping it over to the damage version if you want something for insane. On top of that as well, it does give some extra less chaos damage taken, which definitely chaos res can be harder to fit into builds and such, and if you kind of just need somebody to push you over the edge, it's quite a nice thing to have. So in terms of the sane value, very nice for defense, but then the offensive is actually something that's really kind of underlooked, I guess, or overlooked, I would say. And that's because of the fact that, yes, it gives a lot of crit chance, gives you 50% more multiplier on your crit chance, which is huge for damage, but it also gives corpse destruction. And that's something that's really big because corpses generally deal a lot of damage, especially for monsters and such, and so that can often be a thing that kills you. And so being able to remove them, essentially, and take these corpse detonations and tone them down to basically nothing, so as in like rare monsters can't be detonating corpses, or strong boxes, etc. That's really nice because the insane version still gives you a layer of defense where you're still taking out those corpses, which is really nice. So looking at this chess piece, definitely maybe isn't like your super min-max chess piece, but it's a cool one to wear. The last item on the list is the Eternal Damnation. This thing, otherwise known as like the funny amulet, is something that's made a return with Sanctum League and is extraordinarily powerful. Its drop rate has been reduced, as now it's a core like drop reward. If you do a specialized Sanctum, then you can get the Eternal Damnation reward. It used to be super popular back in Sanctum and drop all the time. It is still decently cheap, actually. I think you can get them for like a Divine or so. They can roll really high on the Chaos Res, which will cost you a ton, but you don't really need that. What's so important about this is that it gives you flat elemental damage reduction equal to half of your chaos res. This is insane because yes, it does reduce your max res, but it's one of those things where the math works out very clearly that if you just stick this thing on, it's giving you much more elemental damage reduction than your max res. So you can kind of just slap this on, provided of course you have enough chaos res, right? So like if you're sitting there with capped chaos res, and you chuck this thing on, boom, you automatically gain a good amount of elemental reduction. What's important to note about this is that it works really well against things with penetration, right? And you'll see this generally as like an uber killing amulet because you can shove this on your build, and with uber bosses and such having a lot of penetration mechanics, well, this elemental damage reduction cannot be penetrated. So you use that essentially to offset the massive damage you're taking from those. You can use it as a mapping amulet, of course, and it can make you extremely tanky, but obviously you are giving up potentially a lot of damage for that. Another thing that's been added this season is the Defiance of Destiny. That's been kind of, solving hit-based recovery and stuff, which is really nice. But if you're looking for, pure reduction versus one-shots, etc., well, Eternal Damnation's pretty damnation good at it. There we go, that's our one horrible pun for the video. Anyway, that's the 5 items that we're kind of going over. I'm going to try to put out some more stuff, or I should say I will put out another video tomorrow on some more content and such. And then on Saturday, I've got something pretty special planned. Hopefully it's useful for people for currency and such. And yeah, that's the plan. So we're back on track. And thank you for all sticking around and such. For those who are new, welcome. And yeah, more content soon. Thanks for watching. Peace.